Welcome to the Spooky Tales podcast presented by me, John.
And me, Louise. We have been fascinated by spooky goings-on since we can remember and wanted to share with you the stories that pique our interest.
Today's story is a continuation of hauntings, possession, poltergeist, psychological manipulation, and an unexpected twist. It's the final part of the spooky tale of the Black Alchemist.
Welcome back to the Spooky Tales podcast. So, give us a recap of the last 3 episodes of the dark tale of the Black Alchemist.
Well, Andrew Collins of Ancient Aliens fame and Bernard, a psychic, having started on a quest to discover the Stave of Nizar, an ancient Egyptian rod, once belonging to Robert Fitzhamon, a cousin of Willem the Conqueror, had been led by various psychic means to discover a variety of stone spearheads with magical sigils on them. They appear to be part of dark and elaborate black magic ceremonies by a man who they called the Black Alchemist. They surmised the Black Alchemist was attempting to achieve a form of transmutation or transformation to immortality by these ancient ceremonies. However, the Black Alchemist appeared to be luring Andy and Bernard into his deceitful web of black magic. Were they needed for a part of his ceremony, and in what way? Andy and Bernard had discovered another stone spearhead in a church swirling in dark and chaotic energies, also a letter addressed to Andrew directly. The Black Alchemist now knew his name. Not only did he know his name, but his movements also. The Black Alchemist had set a deadly trap for them at the Running Well, an ancient place of deep religious significance. They escaped with their lives, just. At the end of part 3, Andrew Collins had been gifted a sword stick by an enigmatic Indian mystic at a local Essex antiques fair. Bernard, a psychic, sensed it was a highly charged magical tool infused with supernatural energies to invoke, banish, and channel psychic energies for magical purposes. It would protect them. As Andy was inspecting it, Bernard thought he saw it turn into a snake.
Like Moses' rod? That had the ability to turn into a snake, didn't it?
Yes, which was linked with the Stave of Nizar. So, was this sword stick to be the replacement for the Stave of Nizar which had begun this journey? Andy, against Bernard's wishes, took the sword stick to try it out in the churchyard opposite the pub where they often met up. As he drove it into the ground, there was a loud bang. The south door of the church had flung open, but there was no one around. Andy was sure this was a sign to go inside and ask the church guardian for a message. Basically, if I heard that, it would be a sign to get the hell out of there for me.
I know, I would not be going, I'll go inside the spooky place that's just the door's just flung open and nobody's there.
Yeah, completely mad. He talked an unwilling Bernard to ask the guardian for a message.
I'm with Bernard on this one.
Yes. Bernard's sort of going, let's just check to see if the guardian says, get out!
Yes, exactly.
Run away! Bernard asked and received messages of the nightmare he had had of the grisly death of the priest.
When you say grisly, what do you mean?
Decapitated, blood everywhere. Bernard was sufficiently freaked, and he left. Both he and Andy took this to mean that the Black Alchemist would pay this church, their church, a visit.
Did they know when?
No.
So what happened then?
Nothing. There was no sign of the Black Alchemist for months. And just as Andy and Bernard were starting to assume this adventure was over, that it had come to nothing after all, it all began again.
Why? What happened?
Do you remember the Great Storm of October in 1987?
Yes.
What do you remember of it?
Not an awful lot, to be honest. I remember there was a great storm, but let's be honest, I don't remember an awful lot.
Okie-doke.
You obviously remember more than I do.
I do. I was living in Swansea at the time, and it didn't hit Swansea, but I remember phoning my mum and dad the next day because, of course, on the news it was just, you know, it was like it was a big deal in the UK.
The thing is that people talk about it as though it was a big deal, and it was, of course, it was. But I don't remember. I suppose I was kind of early teenage, so I didn't really know. I mean, I like weather. I'm not quite as obsessed with weather as some people looking at you.
Yeah, no, this is it. I think that's probably, it does bias it slightly, that why I think this is such an amazing thing, because I am a bit of a weather nerd.
Yeah.
So for one artist who had painted magical and mystical themes the evening of the 15th of October started pleasantly enough as she sat down in a creative writing evening class in King's Cross, North London. The 15th was when it sort of started.
I was going to say, otherwise that means nothing to me. I was like, right. just a random night you're suggesting.
The class had been asked to imagine themselves as a tree being blown in the wind, to sense and feel the wind blowing around the tree's trunk and through its leaves. It's like a drama lesson, this, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm sure I have been a tree many a time in a class.
So the young artist closed her eyes, was quiet for a few moments before writing, "I am the lightning blasted tree." She felt nauseous. Where on earth had that come from? The uneasy feeling made her shiver. And after the class, back in the safety of her North London flat, a feeling of depression and hopelessness had come over her as the intensity of the winds increased outside. She began to see a hideous demon with a long tongue. She recognized it as the Indian goddess of death and destruction, Kali. It was an image she had wanted to paint for some time. The goddess' presence became stronger, and she knew it was connected to the storm and her writing in her class earlier that evening. She had a compulsion to paint the image of Kali, and it must be finished before the night was out as the storm raged around her. Not too far away, Andrew Collins was awoken in his bed to the sound of loud crashing, chimney stacks collapsing and windows exploding.
That actually happened to him. That actually happened. His flat was that affected.
Yeah, well, that both I think his and sort of places next door and so on. They had chimney. In fact, all over that area that was affected. Chimney stacks, bits of roofs coming off.
That really passed me by, all of that. I lived in where we lived. I don't know if it was around the Great Storm. I don't think it was. We had a whirlwind come through the street and actually pass through the house.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but that was. It wasn't like there was no destruction to the house. It was destruction to other places around it, to the garden. But just kind of bypass the house quite a bit. But no, the idea of windows exploding. Yes,
so the pressure of the wind was so much that it was bowing the window, and then the windows, the latch or whatever, gave way. Crawling to his safe place in his flat. I love the fact that he's got a safe place in his flat.
Who knows what a safe place is? Do we have a safe place?
I don't know.
Is it under the stairs?
Well, that's Sally's safe place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sally's the cat.
Sally's the cat, and she likes to go to the cupboard underneath the stairs.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not sure. Perhaps we ought to get one in case.
I think it would be that.
Yeah. Yes. So crawling to his safe place in his flat, he too could sense something very powerful manifesting itself. As he kneeled before his meditation altar and so he's in his safe place. He's basically got his meditation altar.
Very nice.
As he kneeled before his meditation altar and closed his eyes, he could see images of a demonic female catching cackling with laughter. A friend of Andrew in another part of the country could not sleep for the noise. She kept nervously looking at the vibrating bedroom window. Amongst the chaotic shadows formed by the streetlights and the trees outside, a new shape started to block out the light. It was a human-like form, yet its torso and head were that of a wolf, a she-wolf. This was no shadow play. She could see the coarse bristles, the sticky saliva around the mouth, the jagged teeth. She got up and made for the kitchen, where she could hear a rattling window, which she secured. Her flatmate entered the kitchen, bleary-eyed, and told her of a nightmare she had had. She was being held against her will in a house by an old woman with a wolf's head. There were 2 men as well, also with wolf's head. And that's quite a coincidence. I think she's quite calm about it. Sees an old woman with a wolf's head, gets up and goes to the kitchen.
And closes the window.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost
like
like putting the kettle on as she went past, it seems.
I know, exactly. And I quite like the fact she was just lying there watching the window vibrate. I would not be lying there
You'd be having duvet, would you, over the head?
Well, I would probably be doing something other than just lying there watching my window vibrate.
Yes, that's a good point.
I take it she made for the kitchen because she was wanting a cup of tea.
Well, that's kind of what I thought as well. What shall I do? I'm British. I know. I'll make a cup of tea. Yeah.
And then the flatmate entered the kitchen, obviously thinking, I'll have a cup of tea as well as we're all up.
Absolutely.
All having thoughts about wolves.
Yes. No, the fact that both of them was. The lady, her flatmate was a lady called Gaynor Sutherland. For anyone who's read any of the sort of psychic questing stories, and any other Andrew Collins books and Graham Phillips books, Gaynor Sutherland pops up quite a lot.
Yeah, she's quite an amazing psychic. Well, she was reported to be.
Yeah, particularly in the Green Stone, she very much sort of helped them, get to their sort of to their quest. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, less surprising that someone of Gaynor Sutherland's reputation was having such a dream. It was the most powerful storm the British Isles had seen for 300 years. It occurred on the night of the 15th and the early morning of the 16th of October, with winds reaching 135 miles an hour, that's 217 kilometres per hour, and blowing continually at 80 miles an hour, that's 129 kilometres per hour. Most people who remember it as the hurricane that Michael Fish, a weatherman on the BBC, didn't predict. Do you remember that at all?
I remember the hoo-ha about it, yes. But I think it's really unfair. It's really unfair because he wasn't alone. It was the fact that he was patronising and a misogynist. I think is what we actually should remember, because he was patronising and a misogynist. But I don't think we should,
Yeah, he was presenting the lunchtime weather and opened by saying that apparently a concerned lady had rung the BBC saying that there was a hurricane on the way. Then Michael Fish calmly said, "If you're watching, don't worry, there isn't." He then went on to say, "It would be a bit windy, incidentally, with the strongest winds over Spain and into France."
He was so dismissive. He was so patronising and dismissive. And that's why it's so famous, because he was just...
Yeah. It was like, as you say...
Silly woman.
Yes.
That was his tone,
yes,
wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Absolutely. The storm raged from late at night on the 15th of October through to mid-morning on the 16th of October. The storm is also remembered... Actually, it's worth pointing out, because I said the winds were 135 miles an hour, 217 kilometres. For most people, that's... I think for anyone listening in the States would probably be thinking, oh, we get that for breakfast.
Yes, that's true.
Or even Scotland. Yeah, so it was a big deal for us.
At that time as well. Probably now...
Yeah, and it hit London as well.
Yes, it hit. Yes, that's right. It hit the southeast.
If it had hit the regions.
Yes, it hit Kent.
Yeah, yes, that's right. If it had hit, Gloucester, they'd probably go, oh, well, they deserved it.
Well, they get flooded regularly in Gloucester, and nobody even bats an eyelid, do they?
That's right.
Entire villages that are not seen for months on end because of the water. We don't mention it.
That's right. Yes. The storm is also remembered as the night that Sevenoaks, a posh town in Kent, became One Oak. as the storm tore down all but one of the mighty oak trees from which the town had got its name. More seriously, 22 people in England and France lost their lives that night. 15 million trees were blown down in the southern and eastern counties of England. That is quite a lot.
That is quite a lot.
It was chaos.
Yeah, but it doesn't take much for it to be chaos.
It's true. It's an inch of snow will do that. We had 5,000 trees that had fallen over the railway tracks. The national grid sustained heavy damage, having to shut down all of London and the southeast to avert catastrophic damage, which would have taken weeks and months to repair.
I love the fact that you've gone into the storm so much.
There is relevance.
Right,
there is relevance.
You are knee deep in your weather stuff here.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I have gone into it a bit much, but there is relevance. The strange occurrences compelling people to draw the Indian goddess of death and destruction Kali, having terrifying nightmares and visions of she-wolves, or, as in Andrew's case, an old crone. Had practitioners of the dark arts used the hurricane's primeval force of great power, personified in people's minds as a crone like a she-wolf, a ruler of chaos, darkness and death and destruction, for their own ends?
How do you mean?
Well, several sites had been targeted and had been destroyed. Half the trees at Lullington, making up the wooded grove surrounding the churchyard, had been cleared, as had the beech trees at Ide Hill Church. So those were two locations that had they. So you're just about to say something.
No, I was just about to say previous sites.
Yes, indeed.
In this story.
They were.
Is that what they are? Yeah.
Yes, previous sites. So the clearing used by the Black Alchemist on Shenfield Common had been destroyed, including the tree where the stone marker was found by Bernard. At Rettenham, the tree at the centre of the landscape's geometry had been destroyed by lightning. Creepiest of all was the central tree, a horse chestnut tree in the churchyard at Danbury, where Bernard and Andrew had found stone markers there also. That Danbury's more their church, the one that we'd spoken about earlier. It had been obliterated by lightning, with only a disfigured stump remaining. Upon visiting the churchyard, they found a flint, as in a piece of stone, rather than something for a gun.
Right.
Or a lighter. The Black Alchemist would have known that their magical practices would have been amplified by such a strong force as we approached the 31st of October. So there's part of what's being suggested is that they used the hurricane to amplify their magical practices in preparation for Halloween.
Oh, I see. Right.
There are other schools of thought that say actually they also amplified the storm as well.
Oh, because they wanted to destroy.
Yes.
They were protecting sites. Is that right? Is that why they would be destroying stuff?
Yes, but also just to cause particular mayhem for their own ends. Destroy stuff, but also for their ultimate goal of either the transmutation or some other means.
Oh, right, okay.
Because it would not necessarily be the Black Alchemist. There would be other groups up and down the country sort of going, oh, great, there's a storm on the way. We'll use this for our, or indeed, we'll try to make this even bigger than it is now.
Oh, right, okay.
For their own powerful ends in preparation for Halloween.
So is that what they're saying, that they can actually use like the kind of weather forces?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, the primeval sort of forces like that, yes, that they can use to amplify.
Because it's a natural energy that they're kind of harnessing.
Yes,
right.
And that's why people are seeing things like old crones and she-wolves and goddesses of death and destruction and things like that. So those who have those abilities, psychic ability, they tune into that.
So they're not saying that all of those things that they saw is necessarily to do with the Black Alchemist, but they are to do with people using the potential of the storm.
Yes, one of which was the Black Alchemist.
Yes, okay.
So
I did wonder why we were looking at all these other people, but now I understand it.
Yes.
You're kind of using it as a kind of, this is the kind of what can happen in these storms.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, there is, I say in fact, it has been said that it was the witches and wizards of England that caused the storm that destroyed the Spanish Armada back in Elizabeth I's time.
Oh yes, I have heard of that.
Yeah.
But does that mean you could also use it for good?
Well, why not? Yeah.
Those natural forces.
Yeah, I suppose so, but I don't know. I've not heard of that being, unless
I suppose disruption is normally seen as a.
But the storm was actually quite a cleansing thing in many ways. It was obviously not very cleansing for those 2 people who died. 22 people, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you said 2 people.
Oh right, I think it was 1 in the UK.
And 21 in France.
Yeah, I think so. So you see, this is obviously what we don't hear much about in this country. Is it's pretty crap in the north of France as well.
Gosh.
Obviously in the UK it's the 15 million trees, but people who look after trees, the name of those people escapes me.
Tree surgeons.
Tree surgeons. Yeah.
People who look after trees.
It sound like they're in part of the NHS or something. Because of this clearing, the earth beforehand was very compacted and was stopping trees growing properly. And because of these this sort of clearings, the earth was less compacted and trees. Okay, I'm really going into one here, aren't I?
You're really going into a weather talk with John.
That's right. Forestry management on Spooky Tales, ladies and gentlemen.
Your passion for weather knows no bounds, doesn't it?
Right. Let's continue.
You didn't realise quite how much you were going on to the weather watch, did you?
No, I had lots more as well.
Did you? Yeah. No, but I do remember. This is actually, you are bringing stuff back. That the trees that fell on the tracks, that changed how they would then keep trees near. No, because they kind of got complacent.
Oh, I see. Right.
And so they actually the cuttings were actually maintained differently after that to prevent so much destruction.
Yeah.
Because the idea is we're probably going to have more of these kind of storms.
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to alter how it's actually done.
Oh, okay.
If I remember right.
Crikey, we're glad they did that because it's pretty awful now.
Yes, exactly. But we don't have kind of 5,000
with leaves on the line and so on. Yeah. So on with the story. The aftermath of the Great Storm left Andrew and Bernard shaken, but more determined than ever to unravel the mystery of the Black Alchemist. They realized that the destruction caused by the storm wasn't random. It had targeted specific locations tied to their investigation.
That's quite chilling. What did they do next?
They decided to revisit some of their affected sites. At Danbury Churchyard, where the horse chestnut tree had been destroyed, they found something unexpected.
What was it?
A small, intricately carved stone figurine buried among the roots of the destroyed tree. Bernard's psychic ability suggested that it was very old, possibly Neolithic. They took it to an archaeologist friend for examination.
And what did the archaeologist say?
The archaeologist confirmed it was indeed ancient, likely to be dating back to around 3000 BCE. Here's the strange part. It had markings that seemed much more recent, possibly added within the last few decades.
That's odd. What kind of markings?
Symbols that Andrew recognised with some of the stone markers they'd found earlier. It seemed the Black Alchemist had been using genuinely ancient artefacts in his rituals.
That's a bit... I don't know, that just seems even more...
Yeah, dastardly.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. So what did this mean for their investigation?
It added a new layer of complexity. They now had to consider not just the Black Alchemist's current activities, but also how he might be tapping into much older, perhaps even prehistoric magical practices.
That sounds like it would make their task even more challenging.
Absolutely. But they pressed on, driven by a mix of curiosity and concern about what the Black Alchemist might be planning next.
Did they have any leads?
Yes, they did. Remember the flint calling card that they found at Danbury? Bernard's psychic impression suggested it was left by a woman. They started investigating local occult groups, trying to identify any female practitioners who might be working with the Black Alchemist.
Any luck?
It led them to a small, secretive group that met in an old manor house just outside of Essex. Andrew and Bernard managed to infiltrate one of their meetings under the guise of being interested new members.
How do you find a small secretive group? Because by their very nature, they're secretive.
Well, yes, but these people, and Andrew particularly, knows people. He spent his entire life in this kind of realm. What the Black Alchemist is 84, I think it started. So 85. But they'd done they'd been doing this psychic questing for years. So he'd been working with Graham Phillips, like on the Green Stone, and so that was back in the late 70s. So there was he knew a lot of people.
Right, so he knew.
So, for example, even on this story, he knew people to go and find out about magic sigils. So, yeah, so it wasn't. I mean, I doubt there was. I know this was the 80s, and we know how crazy the 80s were, and
the 80s were wild.
Probably there were secret society adverts in disguise.
Oh yes, probably in the
local paper.
Yes, absolutely. We meet at 10.
Yes, you've probably just got to know the code.
Yes, trousers for sale, something like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Got too interesting.
That might be my code.
What, trousers for sale?
Yeah.
I'll know then in future if I see that in the locals.
In the local ads. I don't know if you got local ads now. It'd be a local Facebook group, wouldn't it? Actually, that would people would just point me to Vinted. Actually.
Yes.
Or other.
You'd get lots of adverts for trousers.
Yes, yeah. Actually, I don't think I will.
No. So the meeting was.
Maybe it'll be my code for when I meet people. Do you have any trousers for sale?
Well, to see what they say.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they go and hand you a card with an address on it or something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Or a meeting place and a time.
Oh, bless you. Hand me a card. Wouldn't they zap it across to my phone?
Wouldn't know how to do that.
No, exactly. Have you not had people do that? They go, I'll send you my contact details. And you're like, whoa.
Well, how? What? I have done it on occasion, but it's one of those things like, have you got it yet? Have you got it?
Yeah.
You've got it now?
It's just be easier to have written it down and passed it over, yeah.
The meeting was unsettling. The group performed rituals that seemed to combine elements of various occult traditions. Bernard and Matthew noticed symbols similar to those that they'd seen on the stone markers. But most importantly, they overheard mentions of a major ritual planned for the winter solstice.
The winter solstice? That's significant in many magical traditions, isn't it?
Exactly. And given the power the Black Alchemist had apparently tapped into during the Great Storm, Andrew and Bernard were deeply concerned about what might happen if an even more powerful ritual was performed on such an auspicious date.
So the winter solstice, 21st of December, yeah?
Yep, that's the one.
So what did they do?
They decided they needed to find the location of this ritual and try and stop it. But they were running out of time, with the solstice approaching quickly.
How did they go about trying to find the location?
Very much similar as they've been going on so far, really. So they used a combination of Bernard's psychic abilities, Andrew's careful analysis. He's sort of reading and heading off to the library and what have you. And also his careful analysis of the geometry of the sites they discovered so far.
Right.
And good old-fashioned detective work. They pored over maps, talked to locals about any strange occurrences, and that must have been interesting conversations, and even did some nighttime stakeouts at potential locations.
That sounds exhausting. Did it pay off, though?
It did, but not in the way they expected. Just days before the solstice, they received an anonymous letter.
What did it say?
It contained a map and a cryptic message. The circle will be complete. Will you be the final point?
No.
And the map showed a location deep in Epping Forest. So they'd done all this work, this detective work. They'd spoken to strangers. They'd been in the library. They'd done careful analysis of the geometry. And basically, they get given an invitation.
And they didn't go, because that's got trap written all over it.
Oh,
that's like Scooby-Doo stuff.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what Bernard thought. And Andrew, of course. So yeah, Andrew and Bernard thought exactly the same thing. But they also realised it might be their only chance to confront the Black Alchemist and put an end to whatever he was planning.
So did they go?
They did.
Ooh.
But not before taking precautions. Very much like at the Running Well, where they nearly lost their lives. They had several precautions there in place, which helped them in the end. They informed a trusted friend about where they were going. Well, that's a bit like telling your mum and dad, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, when I go for a walk,
it's not really a precaution.
No, that's just,
Oh, they haven't been back for a while. Oh,
yeah,
dear.
We know now to where to look.
Yeah, that's right. And arranged to check in regularly. They also brought the sword stick that Andrew had been gifted earlier.
So that's their two precautions.
Yes, but that's quite sensible, taking a sword stick, because
no.
You can also use it as a stick.
Yes.
So they arrived at the said location just as the sun was setting on the eve of the winter solstice. The forest was eerily quiet, and as they approached the spot marked on the map, they saw a clearing ahead, illuminated by flickering firelight.
Were there people there?
Yes, a group of robed figures standing in a circle.
Run away, run away, run away, run away, run away. Do not approach. Run away.
That's right. A group of robed figures. You've got a sword stick and someone knows where you are to collect the bodies, basically.
Run away.
Yeah.
Do not. I mean, no. Honestly, no.
So at the centre was a tall, imposing figure that they immediately recognised as the Black Alchemist.
How did they know it was him?
Well, I don't think they recognised it. Oh, yeah, that's the same as the photograph in the paper or anything like that. It was just they felt the energy. Bernard felt the energy.
Right.
He knew that this was the Black Alchemist because he'd actually, if you remember in previous episodes, where he had psychically connected in the graveyard to the Black Alchemist when the Black Alchemist had visited the graveyard. And so he will recognise his scent, if you like, his psychic scent.
Yes.
The energy Bernard sensed was unmistakable. There you go. Plus, the figure was holding a staff that matched the description of the Stave of Nizar. That very artifact that had started their whole investigation. It all links.
What happened next?
So, Andrew and Bernard stepped into the clearing.
No!
That's right.
No!
The Black Alchemist turned to face them. He spoke, his voice deep and resonant. Welcome. Was that deep and resonant?
Yeah.
Welcome. We've been waiting for you.
Ooh, that's chilling. Did they realise it had all been orchestrated? Well, they must have realised. I mean, maybe they were compelled.
Compelled? Okay. What do you mean as in magically compelled?
Yeah, I wonder. Because, surely everything. And Bernard has been a sensible lad up to.
Yes. And he would normally go, no way, Jose, let's not do this. Yes, really good point. And it very much seemed that way. Been given an invitation and everything. Yes. So the Black Alchemist explained that their entire journey, the stone markers, the storm, everything had been a test. He needed individuals who could perceive and navigate the hidden magical currents of the land.
So what did he want from them?
He wanted them to join him in a ritual that he claimed would awaken the sleeping power of the land. He believed that by combining ancient magical practices with modern occult knowledge, he could tap into the unprecedented source of power.
That sounds dangerous. What did Andrew and Bernard do?
Well, they were torn. Part of them was curious about what might happen, but they also recognised the potential for disaster. In that moment of indecision, Bernard sensed something, a presence he described as the true guardian of the land.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's hard to explain, but Bernard felt that the land itself was aware and had its own form of consciousness. That's actually quite a common
thing. That's a pagan. Very much. Maybe think of Gaia.
Yes, exactly. And it was not happy with what the Black Alchemist was attempting.
No, I don't blame it. So what happened?
Andrew, trusting Bernard's instincts, raised the sword stick and drove it into the ground at the edge of the circle. There was a blinding flash of light and a sound like thunder. And if you're familiar with the psychic questing stories and adventures, the final act always has a blinding flash and a loud bang of some sort.
Yes, that is true. So what happened then?
When their vision cleared, the Black Alchemist and his followers were gone. The clearing was empty, except for Andrew and Bernard, and the sword stick still vibrating where it stood in the ground.
Had they been there at all? Was it all just an image?
Oh, I didn't think of that. Yes.
So they were completely gone?
Yes.
And the flickering firelight?
Yes.
Well, they're all gone. Well, it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Gone.
So what did Bernard and Andrew do?
Well,
what make of that? Then?
Well, they were never entirely sure what happened that night. I mean, well, that would leave you in that kind of frame of mind, wouldn't it?
Well, imagine it. You'd be completely discombobulated.
Yes, because one minute you're nervous. Oh, what should we do? Should we see what happens? Oh, no, land doesn't like it. Stick the magical sword you've been given into the ground. Big flash of light, and then they've gone. Everything's gone.
But wouldn't you think that the Black Alchemist would kind of have stopped them doing the sword thing? He'd have thought, huh? No.
Yeah, I mean, he may even have thought that was going to happen, or known that was going to happen, perhaps.
But I wonder whether he was actually truly there.
Yeah, or maybe he was just convinced he would bring them over to the dark side.
Well, he didn't actually say it was dark.
Well, no, but I guess I'm using Star Wars metaphors here. They were never entirely sure what happened that night. They both felt that somehow, by trusting in the inherent magic of the land itself, rather than trying to control or exploit it, they had thwarted the Black Alchemist's plans. So there we go, the end of the tale of the Black Alchemist. Or is it?
Ooh.
Andrew Collins wrote a sequel called The Second Coming, which continued their psychic questing adventures with the Black Alchemist.
Did they ever kind of, meet and encounter the Black Alchemist again? Did they ever,
Well, there were rumours and strange occurrences over the years that had made them wonder, but they never had another direct confrontation. However, both Andrew and Bernard felt that their experience had changed them profoundly. They continued to explore the hidden history and magic of the British landscape, but always with a deep respect for the land itself.
Well, it sounds quite a journey. So, thinking about it, what do you think the main message or lesson? Is there a lesson to the story?
Well, I don't know, because although quite a thing to happen in terms of a big flash of light and store swords and people in robes in circles and stuff, it's kind of your archetypal sort of satanic sounding stuff, isn't it?
But it actually sounds like there was more amazing stuff that happened up until that final confrontation, if it was a confrontation.
Yeah.
Because there was some other stuff that happened that was really
yes, and
more dramatic than that in some way.
And all the sort of coincidences that lead them to that point and so on. And then it just sort of finishes there. And although he does write another sequel, but that sequel goes on actually to Whitby, and the Black Alchemist is kind of a bit part in it. And they actually go to Whitby to battle Dracula.
Wow.
Or the essence of Dracula.
Gosh.
Probably. So, but I would recommend listeners to go and read it if they're interested in that. But also to, if you're into the psychic questing type of stuff, go back and read Graham Phillips and Andrew Collins on the Greenstone, The Eye of Fire. That was the next book after that. Fabulous books, and I think Graham Phillips has just brought another one out which continues the story of the Greenstone. So they're all good adventures in this type of stuff.
In some ways, they're kind of boys' own adventures, aren't they?
I suppose so, yeah. There we go then. The end of the tale of the Black Alchemist. However, for Louise and I, it is also the end of our Spooky Tales adventures.
Thank you for listening to the Spooky Tales podcast. It has been our pleasure to be with you over the last few years. John and I wish you the very best for the future.
Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.